Good morning and welcome to this brand new edition of the newspaper show right here on ET Now. I'm Cheryl D'Souza and this is the weekend edition of the show. But I will continue to getting you the top headlines as there on the Economic Times as well as the Times of India. So let's get going with the top 10 stories that's there on the Economic Times for you this morning. And first up, it is about SBI. They reported a Q4 net profit and has jumped fourfold. So that is the top story that's there on the Economic Times this morning. Moving on, you have Tata Sons. They held a board meeting yesterday and post that they've come out with a statement saying that Tata Sons is in a strong financial position. Moving on to Reliance Jio, as the week comes to an end, Reliance Jio has two new investors. That's Geo Platform. That's Jio to raise 13,640 crore rupees from Mubadala as well as Silver Lake. Moving on to L&T, they also came up with their Q4 numbers yesterday post-market hours, and L&T has missed its auto inflow guidance for FY20. Let's move on now, and you have WeWork Global will put $100 million in their Indian arm. And talking about the IBC rules, firms get 6-month relief from the IBC rules. That was also announced by the finance minister in a slew of reforms that were coming for India Inc. as well as for the economy. Moving on, you have PSU banks. They lure MSMEs with pre-approved loans. You have Wall Street that's jumped on a US job market improvement. Nasdaq is just inching closer to that record high levels. Moving on to AstraZeneca is on track to roll out the vaccine in September, and 8 countries form alliance to counter China. So those are the top 10 headlines that's there on the Economic Times this morning for you. But let me now move on and talk about the top 5 market headlines that's there on the Economic Times. And first up, more promoters head to delist their stocks. That is among the top headlines that's there on ET markets. Moving on, you have Wall Street, like I mentioned, is jumped on US job market improvement. Talking about RBI, they've set up a 500 crore rupees payment infra development fund. Sugar stocks are rallying on a rising demand. And lastly, brokerages maintain a buy rating on BPCL. So those are the top 5 headlines coming in on the markets front. Let me quickly take you through the top headlines that's coming on the corporate front. You have SBI Q4 net profit jumps fourfold. I'll talk more on that later on the show. Moving on, you have Tata Sons. They've said that they are in a strong financial position. Jio to raise 13,640 crore rupees from Mubadala as well as Silver Lake. L&T has missed their auto inflow guidance for FY20. And MERC saying that the sentiment will pick up by festive season. All right, let me now quickly take you through the US markets. Yesterday, the Wall Street surged higher on Friday after striking upbeat May job reports unexpectedly provided the clearest evidence that the US economy is headed for a quicker than expected recovery from the COVID-19. The Nasdaq breached its all-time closing high levels that it reached in February, but it pared gains towards the end of the session. So it's ended the session slightly below the record closing levels that it touched in the month of February. But all major US stock indices, they advanced over 2% or more in the session. So there you go. Wall Street definitely giving some signs of signs of relief on that front. Hope to see that trickle into all the economies. You saw even our markets for the week, Nifty actually rose about 6%. So you can see some sort of recovery coming in the markets, and also this job reports indicating that there is the economy in the United States is seeing a quicker than expected rebound. But let me move on and let me talk about Reliance Jio and Geo Platform. It's a brand new week. A week comes to an end, and this time you don't have one, but you have 2 investors that have struck a deal with Reliance Industries for Geo Platform. Which are they and how much are they going to invest? I have my colleague Ajay Sharma joining us with all the details. Ajay, good morning. Take it away.
Well, yet another deal coming in as far as Geo Platforms is concerned. Another 5,000 crore coming in from Silver Lake, taking their total investment to almost 2% now into the company. This comes close on the heels of the Abu Dhabi fund investing 9,000 crore, Mubadala. So there's a string of transactions which have happened in the last 6 weeks, taking the total kind of stake sale from Geo Platform almost knocking the 1 lakh crore mark. And clearly the quality of investors which have come in, be it private equity investors, be it strategic investors like Facebook for Geo Platforms, completely changing the complexion of the way the investing community globally, high-tech, sophisticated investors look at Geo Platforms as a technology end-to-end e-commerce play, multimedia play, telecom, technology and media as TMT, they are called in overseas markets. This is good news for Reliance shareholders. The recently concluded rights issue also at 1267, and now the stock is at a lifetime high once again, crossing the 10 lakh crore mark, crossing the $130 billion mark. Because of these transaction and asset monetization, the way value unlocking is happening in the company, the stock is onto a sharp rally. So another good news coming in for Reliance Industries shareholders this morning.
Thank you, Ajay, for taking us through the recent set of investors that have entered Geo Platforms. But let's move on and let's talk about the top story that's there on the Economic Times, and that is the SBI Q4 earnings. So what were the earnings like? Did they meet expectations? Did they beat expectations? I have my colleague Varun standing in to give us the lowdown on SBI's Q4 earnings. Good morning, Varun.
SBI's Q4 number was cheered by the street. At the end of the day, the stock was 10% up. I'm going to walk you through the numbers to maybe figure out why that happened. Profits was higher than our poll and most brokers as well at 3,581 crores. Our poll was significantly lower. NII was flat YOI at 22,700 versus last year's 22,900. So no growth there. So if you want to look at the operating performance has really improved because your provisions have spiked up, but your profits have shot up. So the operating profit for this quarter and year was also an all-time record for SBI, coming in at in excess of 14,000 crores, which I think is also the best record in their history of operating. The asset quality, gross and net NPAs both came down. Slippage is halved Q on Q to 8,000 crores. So that's all positive. Only 18% of the customers are availing moratorium, and only 13% of the corporate customers have not made a single installment payment. So those figures are really low, and perhaps that has something to do with SBI being mainly government employees who have continued to receive their salaries and hence have continued making their payments. So those were the major takeaways. The credit growth for this quarter, Q on Q, was 5.7%. Deposits for the end of year grew in the mid-teens at around 14-15%. So that's quite healthy. So a strong show from them. And now all the focus will shift to Q1 and Q2.
All right. Thank you, Varun, for taking us through the earnings. But here's a slice of the exclusive conversation that our managing editor had with Rajneesh Kumar, who spoke on the moratorium and the earnings. Listen in to that excerpt of the conversation.
First understand it that this moratorium, where there is a disruption of the cash flow, whether it is individual or businesses. In such circumstances, globally, in all regulators, and the regulators who are also supposed to be as tough as our Reserve Bank of India, whether it is US, whether it is Singapore, whether it is European regulators, everywhere, realizing the situation, some dispensations have been given. So credit culture would be impacted by this moratorium. I don't subscribe to that view. It is a realization of the ground reality. And it is a realization of the fact that people want to pay. But if there is a disruption to their cash flow, which is not in their hands, so in such circumstances, it is logical that repayment is always aligned to your capacity to pay. And this is a realignment to their capacity to pay. It is not about intent. That is how I view it. And I don't think that this is going to impact the culture. The people who don't pay, they don't pay, whether COVID or no COVID. And the people who want to pay, they are paying even in COVID, and the statistics is with us, where 82% of our customers, where we have said moratorium is available, but they have paid more than 2 installments. So what I feel that we should not, at least I don't subscribe to this theory, and this is not a phenomena which is peculiar to something India has done exceptional. In fact, if you ask me, our regulatory guidelines as on date are much tighter than what they are in other countries.
Every shareholder of State Bank of India, when I meet them, they said, "Hamara din kab aayega?" So when do you think the time for SBI shareholders will come back?
Market is such a thing that whatever you do, but you can't fight the market, right? They find reason to go down. I sincerely believe that market has not been fair to State Bank for whatever reason. But as I said, that it is ultimately the choice of the investors. But if you look at our performance, nobody has been able to fault us on our performance quarter after quarter. But despite that, and this I made an observation in one of analyst meet, that somebody sneezes and people feel that State Bank will get flu. But that's not the case. So can't help it. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at our balance sheet today and the size of the balance sheet and the earnings, there is no reason that our stock should have gone down in value so much. But I have no capability or capacity to, deal with the market.
Moving from one earnings candidate to another, L&T, here you go. They reported their Q4 earnings yesterday as well, but they have actually missed the sales and order inflow target for FY20. But how were the numbers and what was the management commentary? I'm joined by my colleague Avan to take us through the numbers. Avan?
Well, L&T's earnings were pretty much a mixed bag. You had the profits coming in above street expectations. The revenues were a bit below and margins pretty much in line. So at 3,197 crore rupees, the profit including the PAT from the discontinued operations stood at 3,197 crores. That was down about 6.5% on year. The revenue at 42,245 crores was a bit below what the street was expecting, up about 2.2% nonetheless. Margins at 11.6% versus 12.1%, pretty much in line with street estimates. And the consolidated order book stood at a healthy 3.3 lakh crores, up about 4% on a year-on-year basis. And this quarter alone, they did see order inflow of 57,785 crores, which is quite impressive, higher by nearly 5%. International orders to this contributed about 25%. Now, all of the segments did perform quite well. Infrastructure saw flat revenue growth, but you had the heavy engineering segment, which registered a 31% growth, hydrocarbon 15% growth, the IT services sector saw 22,193 crore revenue, and development projects was just about flattish. So barring power, which was lower by about 42% due to orders not picking up and execution momentum lacking, it was fairly decent all round. Now the interesting part is we're so accustomed to the guidance being doled out by L&T, but this quarter they said they will not be giving out a guidance until the picture is a little more clear, because there's no point in doing so. So they will only give a forecast once the situation on the lockdown, the pandemic, etc. is more clear. But in terms of the commentary, they said as of now they have taken measures to deal with the domestic challenges. The initial quarters of FY 2021 will be adversely affected, but things will go on to improve. Private sector revival, they don't see that at the moment, but they will be dependent on state governments for order inflows.
And let's now shift focus to a story that's there on the page 7 of your Economic Times. And here you go. And this is regarding the IBC. Firms get 6-month relief from IBC rule. The ordinance has been issued on that particular front. I'll read more on that story for you. The move will save companies from insolvency proceedings due to defaults triggered by COVID-19 crisis. So the insolvency suspension, they've suspended Section 7, 9 as well as 10 for the next 6 months. The suspension can be extended up to a year. The provisions suspended for both the borrowers as well as the creditors, and the insolvency can be filed for debt defaults before March 25th. So this is what the entire story is all about. Corporate insolvency resolution filings will be suspended for 6 months for any debt defaults post March 25th, the day that the nationwide lockdown was rolled out to contain the spread of the pandemic. So some sort of relief coming in for companies on that particular front, where the firms will get 6-month relief from IBC rules. But let me now move on to another story that's there on the page 4 of Economic Times, and this is the story that I'm going to talk about. It is about Posterman is in talks with US fund Insight Partners to raise $150 million. If the deal goes through, the software as a service company will see a valuation of $2 billion. So this particular company is in advanced talks with a New York-based investment fund, that is Insight Partners, to raise about $150 million at a valuation of $2 billion. And this is all as per sources. Postman is a collaboration platform for managing, developing and testing application program interfaces, APIs. So this is another piece of information that we are picking up. Another company, an Indian company, I beg your pardon, is in talks with a US fund to raise capital. Let me move on now and let me talk about AstraZeneca and related to the COVID-19 vaccine. Just give me a moment while I flip the pages and get you that particular story. It is on the US company AstraZeneca, that is. Here you go. That's the story that I'm talking about. I beg your pardon. Here, AstraZeneca. That it is in talks to basically, it is on track, sorry, I beg your pardon, on track to roll out the vaccine in September. The British pharma giant AstraZeneca is on track to begin rolling out up to 2 billion doses of coronavirus vaccine in September if the ongoing trials prove successful. That's the word coming in from the CEO of the company. The company is partnering with Oxford University, which has pioneered the vaccine and is already manufacturing doses before seeking final regulatory approval once testing concludes in the coming months. So some sort of relief on coronavirus. AstraZeneca is saying they are on track to roll out the vaccine in September. All fingers crossed, hoping all the tests come clear and we get a vaccine for COVID-19 really as soon as possible. But let me take a look now at the top 5 headlines that's there on the Times of India, and I'll take you through those stories. First up is India and China. Differences can't become disputes. That's the first story that's there on the Times of India. Moving on, you have COVID-19. India is the 6th worst country now. You have Ahmedabad that's topped in corona deaths per million. That is another story that's coming on the Times of India this morning for you. Maharashtra COVID tally crosses 80,000. And lastly, you have Centre saying 90% migrants ferried home. All right, so those are the top 5 headlines coming on the Times of India for you. But let me take you through the top story that's there, and it is there on page 5 of Times of India, and it is about India and China. You know, as the tensions flare at India-China border, Lieutenant General Harinder Singh will lead a delegation of military officers to negotiate with China military officials. India, which has actually been attempting to resolve the issues, is expected to take a tough stance at the meeting. India delegates are expected to raise issues of troop build up at the border and China's attempt to build camps and other temporary structures close to the LAC. To talk more on this, we have my colleague Srinjoy, who's joining us with more details. Srinjoy, take it away.
Yes, the border talks have just begun. Lieutenant General Harinder Singh, he's the Corps Commander of 14 Corps in Leh. He's gone across and he will be meeting Major General Lin Liu. The talks are likely to last for about an hour or so. What we are hearing is as follows. This is the agenda. One, of course, a settling of the situation in the Pangong Say area. That is particularly important because there are reports that the Chinese have come forward from where they were to finger 4, finger 5, that area. And that is not something that is acceptable to India, really. Number two, more importantly, perhaps the Galwan situation. India was building a road. India was building a bridge in Indian territory. The Chinese said that that could not happen. And they came to destroy it. India protected the bridge, Indian soldiers, which led to a scuffle and then a second scuffle, after which there has been a build-up of forces, and quite an enormous build-up of forces. The third point that will come up is actually a reduction in the number of troops on both sides. India believes that if you reduce troops a little bit, and that has been a case about a week ago as a goodwill gesture, a token reduction, it will help to cool down the situation. Point number 4, China has built a lot of semi-permanent structures behind where the troops are. That is in breach of protocol, and that should stop as well. So that is the fourth. And finally, there have been 2 major scuffles. Now these scuffles have to be avoided because these scuffles can lead to escalation. That has to stop. As on the diplomatic side, the 2 sides have been talking for about 3 weeks. The Chinese ambassador was here. He was summoned, in fact, by the foreign secretary. And since then, there have been talks. When it has not been in Delhi, it has been in Beijing. It has also been on the phone. When foreign secretary or the Indian ambassador in Beijing have not speaking, it's been the joint secretary here in charge of East Asia, Naveen Srivastava, who has been speaking. So a lot of conversations have been going on. It is more or less clear on both sides that escalation is not to the benefit of either country. So that is a positive. There is a general feeling of, optimism on both sides. There is a feeling that this can be solved, but there is also a clear understanding that there will be no giving up of Indian territory. So India is going to be firm, but India will be very courteous.
All right, thank you, Shinjoy, for taking us through that story. It's a developing story. Through the course of the day, we will get you all the updates on ET now. But let me move on and let me talk about coronavirus. Right here on page 1, one headline that you have is this one. That is Mumbai is getting back to business and on back of Unlock 1.0. And the other end, you have this particular story that talks about the death rate and the single-day cases. So let me talk about the updated numbers that we've just got a minute ago. The coronavirus pandemic in India grew by the highest number yet again today. You had 9,887 fresh coronavirus cases that were detected in the last 24 hours. That's the highest single-day spike coming in. And with this, the total number of cases in India is across 2.36 lakh. India overtook Italy to become the 6th nation to record the most number of COVID-19 cases in the world. A record number of coronavirus fatalities were also confirmed in the last 24 hours. The infection claimed around 294 lives on Friday. That's the highest number of deaths reported in a day. But on the brighter side, at least 48% of the total coronavirus cases were recovered since the outbreak. So there you go, some signs of hope coming in. 48% of the total coronavirus were recovered since the day of outbreak in India. So that is indeed the top headline about India's coronavirus cases and how they are actually adding up. Let's move on and let me get you a top exclusive voice that we had. But I believe that's all that we have on this edition of the newspaper show. Thank you for watching and take care.